The Mark Reardon Show, sponsored by Cantor Injury Law on St. Louis's News Radio, KMOX.
All right, audio cut of the day coming up. We have no Reardon Roundtable this week because I am taking a couple of days off. Back next Tuesday. Senator Blunt has just checked in, though. He'll be on the show tomorrow. I also want to I have a good election-related topic that I want to kind of tap into you listeners for some calls tomorrow, so we'll do that tomorrow. I have an audio cut of the day I mentioned, and then I do have something coming up at 3:30 that I have no... Oh, yes! This is what's weird about the world that we live in right now. Many KMOX listeners have probably heard Sean Michael Liable do news in the afternoon, evening, and he's a newbie to KMOX. I've never met him. I think I met him for the first time on a Zoom call this morning, and I thought it would be nice to have him on just for a get-to-know-you session. So Sean's coming up. Right now, my friend Mark Cantor from Cantor Injury Law is on the horn. Mark, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm great, Mark. Thanks for having me on.
There's a lot of stuff going on right now. I just kind of wanted to touch base on several types of stories. Mark is personal injury attorney. So this is timed well because you had and I know this isn't your case, but we'll see how much we can, get you to weigh in on this. The husband of the former school teacher from U City that was killed, it was a tragic accident at Starbucks in Olivet. An SUV crashed into the Starbucks, and this teacher, she was teacher of the year, very loved and popular, was killed. So now there's been a lawsuit basically claiming that Starbucks was negligent because they didn't provide proper safety. So is there a case there in your opinion?
Well, it's always difficult to comment on pending litigation. When I knew this was going to be the topic, I went to Missouri CaseNet and I pulled the petition. It's a well-written petition, which is the lawsuit. But there's been no answer filed. So we're commenting without the facts, without all the facts. I mean, obviously, the primary defendant, the negligent party, is the person that drove into the building. So the question is, was it reasonably foreseeable that this car would drive into that Starbucks and kill an innocent person? And obviously, that's a jury question. But I can comment on the law in the state of Missouri because I handle these cases all the time. It's a premises liability case. And if you ask people, well, should a store be responsible for a person that hits the gas and instead of the brake and runs through a store and kills someone, should they be responsible?
Most people say no.
Yeah, most people would say no. But then if you say, well, what if it happened, twice before, or once before? Or what if it happened to Starbucks, 500 times before, and they knew or should have known that it's a common mistake amongst the elderly to hit the gas instead of the brake, especially when there's what I call nose-in parking, where you're parking in front of a glass storefront. And there's no barrier. Then all of a sudden, does it change your answer? Then is it reasonably foreseeable that a person might crash through and harm someone? And then the answer might change. And, unfortunately, we've seen this a couple times this week. We also saw it at an urgent care on the corner of Clarkson and Kerrs Mill. Someone was huffing, is the allegation in the news,
right?
And crashed through and killed another innocent person. I mean, these things are terrible. But that's twice this week this topic's come up. So, does that building need barriers to protect against a person that's allegedly using drugs and passing out while going at highway speeds? So the great thing about this country is that you can always file a lawsuit. And that's also why some people hate lawyers. But I try to only handle the ones I believe are true, and I just don't have enough information here. People drive around barriers. If that happened, then what is Starbucks to do? So I've read the petition. I don't know the answer as to whether or not it's viable because I don't know what the other side is. I don't know their response.
Yeah, well, and what's interesting there is, I'm glad you pointed out that if most people would see a news story, like just looking at the Starbucks case, and they would hear whatever details they would have, and they would probably hear this about a lawsuit. I'm sure a lot of people had this reaction yesterday, and they'd say, oh, here we go. These attorneys are just trying to, dig into a deep pocket of a corporate, citizen like Starbucks. On the other hand, what you said there is something I don't think people really think about. In other words, the nuance that may come with whatever might have happened in the past to that location or anywhere else. That's probably something that people just don't think about.
Right. And this family lost a wonderful person, teacher of the year. And, what if that driver in Missouri, the law only requires that you have insurance for $25,000. So, there's obviously we can't put a dollar amount on a human life, but it's certainly, if you did, it would be much different than $25,000. So what happens is, someone comes into my law firm, and they come into Cantor Injury Law, and they've got this wonderful person, and they're sitting across the table from you crying because that person is now dead, and there's a $25,000 policy. Well, our job as lawyers is to honestly and ethically pursue any pockets of money that may be available. So the petition in this case says that it happened at that same location before that a car went through the Starbucks. Well,
interesting.
Then it changes it. That's a specific allegation. And well, then maybe they knew or should have known. It's foreseeable, and you put pillars up. Now, of course, it's hard to talk about this particular case because it's pending. I'm just talking generically.
Yeah, no. I get it. I think that's interesting. Mark Cantor with Cantor Injury Law. Let me ask about this. So I'm heading to taking a few days off, going to Las Vegas. When I was in Las Vegas 2 times ago, I took an Uber. I don't usually take Ubers around here, but you jump into an Uber or Lyft and got around the Strip that way, and my friend lives outside of the Strip. We got into an Uber this was in February, before all this started. And, this guy was driving crazy. We were legitimately a little worried. We laughed about it in the end. But when you get into a rideshare like that, what kind of responsibility does that driver have? If they have, is it only that $25,000 that you're talking about, or are there cases with negligence that could be proven in those situations? I think that makes a lot of people nervous just getting into the cars.
Right, and unfortunately, we've seen a lot of death and tragedy with these for-hire ride companies. One thing you should know, by the way, is that your automobile insurance, for your everyday residential automobile insurance, has an exclusion. It will not cover you at all if it's for hire. So never go to an airport and if they hold up a sign, rides, and they want $30 in cash, if you get in that car and that same thing happens, you've got no insurance because that's a for hire commercial ride, and most private policies exclude that. But that wasn't your question. The question is, what is the vicarious liability? Is it Uber driver or Lyft driver? Are they an employee? Are they an independent contractor? And what insurance is available? And that is a question of national debate right now because the states are split on that. In California, they're trying to make these drivers employees, and I think that's the way to go because Uber and Lyft, all these companies are making a tremendous amount of money, and if they hire a bad driver, if they fail to screen that person, let's say they hire an Uber driver or a Lyft driver that has 6 prior collisions, and then you get in that car without knowing it, and all of a sudden you're terribly injured. What is the liability? And the answer to that depends on whether they're an employee or an independent contractor. I think Missouri, they ought to be employees, and I think we ought to be able to sue the parent company if, God forbid, someone is injured or killed as a result of that. These companies are making a huge amount of money. So it comes back again to who's in the best position to insure it. It's not the passenger. It's not you getting into the Uber or the Lyft in Vegas. And the driver might have minimal insurance. They might have $100,000 or $200,000, and you could, God forbid, have a terrible injury. Then we need to be able to look at. Otherwise, you become a burden to society. We see people Cantor Injury Law with paralysis and millions of dollars worth of damages, and if the companies don't pay, then we all pay. Then that person becomes Medicare, Social Security. It's all becomes a burden on society. So it's a great question. There's no clear answer, not right now. Certainly not in Missouri, not yet. But I think that there should be vicarious liability, that the Uber and Lyft should be responsible not to negligently entrust these vehicles to and their app to bad drivers. That's my legal answer. Which
Mark
I guess is
Cantor Injury Law. Yeah, no, I know. I got to get some news here. I wanted to ask you a little bit about some things related to guns because we're up on hunting season. But we got some time for that, so we'll revisit that in a couple of weeks. Mark Cantor, Cantor Injury Law. I appreciate it, Mark. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on, Mark. I appreciate you.